The gains that a 50-year-old gets from lifting weights are not as great as the gains as someone who is 25. The benefits of consuming the essential amino acids in the morning when you're not eating other foods is going to have a very positive effect, because when you go through those extended periods without consuming protein, you're going into a net protein loss. Oh, this whole scientific method thing is really cool, like using empirical study of objective phenomena and building hypotheses and testing them, and then through the course of that we keep learning more and more and more.
What is up, guys? We are doing a massive giveaway that I want to share with you. All you need to do is subscribe to the channel for a chance to win a Mito X series or Mito Pro X series from Mito. Red light is a son of a bitch. We're giving this away. This is $450. Very exciting. And we are also giving away a molecular hydrogen maker. I love this guy as well. It's really great for reducing inflammation, tastes delicious. And the red light I use all the time, uses my night light in my living room. It's great for collagen repair. It's great for your eyes, great for your skin. It's awesome. It is a total of about a $700 value of the giveaway. All you gotta do is subscribe between now to the month of August. We'll announce at the end of August. We'll announce it here, as well as on the Instagram page labeled Aaron Alexander. That is my name. Subscribe, win some stuff. Enjoy the conversation. Angelo Keely. We are here. We are here.
We are here.
Thank you for making time to do this. Angelo, what is the most standout misconception around our protein needs, around bioavailability of proteins, around things of that sort? Biggest misconception that you experience, that you see in the social media stratosphere of protein and its impact on the body?
The biggest, whether it's a misconception or lack of understanding about protein, is how fundamentally different it is from carbohydrates and fat, and how key it is as a nutrient, and why the amino acids inside of it, which are essential amino acids, are so essential to survival, and how literally the protein that we eat is what helps rebuild all the proteins in our body. And I think people just don't really actually get that. I think they argue about how much kind of protein and why that protein, and you're trying to build muscle, or like it's all these little smaller arguments, and they miss the really crazy, cool, existential kind of core nature of what makes protein so important.
What would you say the best balance of macros is for a individual looking to be generally fit? They lead a generally active lifestyle. They live somewhere in North America. They work out 3 to 4 days a week. You know, they're probably generally like ancestral-ish type Mediterranean diet. What would you say the best balance of macros is, and perhaps some misconceptions around macros?
I would say the first thing I'd say is, what age are they? I would actually ask you that question, because age
30, 35.
30, 35. I think about 30% protein is approximately pretty good.
Yeah.
And then however much carbs and fat you want to make up the rest, do that. I think though, if you're in some kind of more aggressive training stage where you're really trying to put on and build muscle, or you want to perform that much better, or you're trying to lose fat and maintain the muscle that you have, I would go even higher with that percentage of protein.
And what is protein? Like, what's relevant to understand the building blocks, amino acid chains, all of that? Like how do we break down Protein 101 Masterclass? What is protein? What do we need to know about it?
Protein 101, we'll take it in 2 tracks. One is like, what is protein literally in our body? And then what is protein in the foods that we eat? Yeah. So in our body, over half of all of our solid mass is made up of proteins. Your lean muscle, which I think is the most obvious thing. That's when people think about eating protein. That's why you eat proteins, help rebuild your muscle, build new muscle, but also all of your organs. That's your liver, your heart, your spleen, your kidneys, but also things like your skin, your eyes, your hair, your nails, and other things that don't seem as obviously, I think, like solid mass based, things like enzymes. The enzymes in your body are made up of proteins. Hormones are made up of proteins. And the neurotransmitters in your brain, the chemicals through which you experience emotions and feelings, et cetera, those are the metabolites of protein. So all of these things are proteins, the metabolites of proteins in our body.
Yeah.
And the way that proteins function in nature, it's not just in our body, but speaking to it in our body, is that they only last for a certain amount of time before they're no longer fresh and functional enough. And those proteins in our body, if I just pick on, but this is true for all of them, I'll pick on like my skin tissue. I look at my arm and I notice, or I know like, wow, this is actually made up of millions of proteins. The skin is like millions of these proteins combined. Well, each one of those little proteins at some point in its life gets old and is no longer as functional as it used to be. So that protein, what my body does is it has that protein break down. And when the protein breaks down, it breaks apart into these little individual amino acids. There's 20 of them. Some of them are no longer usable because like I was saying, the protein's old. And those amino acids get peed out. Like they get converted into urea and you pee them out. You're left with some amino acids. And those amino acids then can be reused to build new proteins in our body. And the immediate thing that comes up is like, well, where do you get new amino acids to help rebuild those proteins? That is why we eat protein. We fundamentally eat protein in our diet to digest the protein, to break it down into amino acids, for it to go into our blood so we can rebuild our skin tissue, rebuild our heart, our liver, our kidneys, build new hormones, build enzymes, rebuild our muscle, run our immune system, all of these things. So it's not like an energy source type of thing like fat and carbs primarily are. It's more actually to help rebuild and maintain our body. And it's like the source of nitrogen actually for our body that makes our body these living beings that they are.
I think the elephant in the room, Angelo, is the absolute evidence-based, science-backed practice of breatharianism.
Yeah. It sounds cool, man.
I like it.
I think it sounds cool. I think if you focus on the breath and can be totally fed through the breath and then just for fun want to consume proteins, but not
just for kicks.
I mean, for like enjoyment, for taste, for flavor, not to actually
just for vibes.
Yeah, just for vibes. Then
layer in the vibes.
I like it. I think that sounds good. I like that perspective.
Do you think that's total malarkey? I mean, can people float? Levitate? Can we? You go to Joe Dispenza conferences, and blind people are starting to see again, and you can tap into placebo. You are the placebo. Breaking the habit of being yourself. Like, what is body composition? I know we're going out. We're going on more limbs. Last time we talked, we did limbs.
I would say, man, I'm really open. I'm open to a lot of things being true at the same time.
Yeah.
And my experience in engaging with life and trying to build understanding and trying to be happy and find useful tools and just, like live a good life. Part of it is like, oh, this whole scientific method thing is really cool. Like using empirical study of objective phenomena and building hypotheses and testing them. And then through the course of that, we keep learning more and more and more. And if anything is true in that, the context of science is that anything that we thought we knew before ends up getting proven to be slightly different or wrong, right? There's always more nuance we keep uncovering, which is really cool. Yeah. And I've had a really awesome experience in life, engaging in my dreams, engaging in myth, engaging in religious and spiritual type stuff that is not scientifically empirical at all. It's subjective and it's narrative based and it's weird and I can't explain it. So, I haven't been to the Joe Dispenza stuff and people getting healed. It sounds cool.
I'm going to keep taking us off track into like nebulous nether regions, the annals of Instagram reels, because that's my specialty. And then
the annals of Instagram reels. I like it.
Yeah. And then we'll come back to science. So for a person that wants to be able to show up to a dinner party and have a basic understanding of protein that impresses people, essential amino acids, non-essential amino acids, branch chain amino acids, what's the relevance in understanding things like that? And are there? And what's the breakdown of the specifics of protein itself?
Yeah, there's a lot of relevance. So in proteins that make up our muscle, but also proteins that make up the foods that we eat, each protein is slightly different. Like if you compare like chicken breast protein versus quinoa protein, they're going to be different. And here are the ways that they're different. Number one is some of those proteins are more digestible by a human than others. Animal proteins are more digestible. That doesn't mean um, like my tummy feels better when I eat it, but measurably your body and your stomach acids and enzymes and all these things can break down that protein and get the amino acids out of it more easily. So that's kind of the most fundamental first thing to understand that maybe other people at your dinner party don't know yet. And you could pick it
Got
out.
him.
You could point to it. You could point to the things that you guys are eating and be like, did you know the protein digestibility corrected amino acid score for that quinoa over there is quite different than the
Yeah.
legumes? Yeah.
Yeah.
The next major point, though, is okay.
Well, can we stick with that, because I think that's an interesting thing, like bioavailability and
Mhm.
assimilation of different proteins. That's something, and we'll continue down the track of decompartmentalizing a protein. But I think assimilation, bioavailability is incredibly important, and also there's a lot of confusion in that space. So whey protein, pea protein, soy protein, collagen protein, eating quinoa, mixing it together as a vegetarian or vegan, and being able to do the chemistry to eventually complete your essential amino acids to be able to take part in muscle protein synthesis and be able to like be alive. What's the differentiation between different types of proteins and assimilation thereof, bioavailability, probably a better way of saying that?
I think bioavailability is probably the better because assimilation is also going to include what are the amino acid compositions of them. Like it's one step further. But bioavailability,
Yeah.
you can actually Google this basically about any protein source and say, what's the digestibility score of, and choose that thing. Across the board, what you're going to find is that plant proteins, and we're talking about things like grains, legumes, but even something like a potato, which people don't realize, a potato is actually a complete protein. It has a complete protein profile in it. So you can't critique that one from amino acid spectrum. But the digestibility of these things, the proteins, the ability to break it down and actually make it available to your body so your body can use the amino acids in it, it's less for plants. It's more for animal-based products. But that's
Why
not
is
just
that?
meats. Why is that is quite frankly like a deeper question that I don't think I have the biochemistry background to like fully describe to you in detail. But at the
Yeah.
most fundamental level, you can think about it in this way. Um, a protein is constructed primarily to serve that organism itself, right? So, like the protein structure of the quinoa is to serve the quinoa. And to
Mm.
some degree, it could be to serve it so that maybe what's going to serve its structure, its ability to live, to survive, et cetera. It could also potentially be to reproduce. And so it could mean like, hey, would someone eat my seeds and then spread those seeds somewhere else? And could the quinoa spread to other locations, et cetera? But that's its primary function. And so similarly for our bodies, like our protein is not constructed, the protein in our muscle is not constructed so that like will be delicious and really work well for this other animal to survive necessarily.
Yeah.
But it just simply appears that the other animals and the proteins in them and in the products they produce, like dairy, being more similar to our protein structure seems to be related to our ability to digest them.
Mm.
If you really want to get down into like, well, when you actually consume this protein, what's the unique kind of what's the structure of the protein exactly, and why are our enzymes more able to break down those proteins? I think it's like a way more in-depth, nerdy subject.
And so if we were to start to parse out animal-based proteins,
Mm-hmm.
where would the hierarchy come in whole food sources, eating actually collagen like from a bone and broiling up some collagen, throwing some salt in that guy, compared to a collagen powder? And then comparing also whey in comparison to collagen or any other animal-based
Mm-hmm.
proteins that you would potentially recommend.
So right now, thus far, what we've talked about is the bioavailability, how digestible it is.
Yeah.
Also, each one of these protein sources has a different amino acid profile that
Mm.
makes it more or less effective for actually stimulating new protein synthesis in the body. So just to lay that out really quickly, collagen is actually not a complete protein.
Right.
In that it is lower, it's pretty deficient in tryptophan, and it's just the overall profile of it is not going to be something that's going to, like, when you consume it, it's going to tell your body, hey, build new proteins. Whereas something like a chicken, like lean chicken breast, or a whey protein powder, or dairy, or beef, the actual muscle of these animals is a complete protein, and when consumed, it'll tell your body, hey, build new proteins and stimulate this protein synthesis. So when you're comparing bioavailability, it's kind of a separate question slightly. I think it's an interesting question, actually. Hey, what's the bioavailability of collagen directly from an animal versus like kind of an isolated, an isolate product, like collagen peptides? I'm actually not familiar with a direct study that compares those two, but there's very clear studies that are more directly on beef eaten alone versus whey protein isolate versus things like essential amino acids. And my assumption would be that you would have similar types of results. So to speak to that really quickly, if I compare 30 grams of beef on its own, it will stimulate as much protein synthesis as over twice the amount, 70 grams of beef, the exact type of protein, if I eat it on its own versus if I eat it as part of a mixed meal.
Why?
So the reason for that is because the beef protein, and mixed meal meaning like I eat it with like potatoes and broccoli, right? The beef protein on its own, when consumed, is more easily digested because it's not getting mixed up with the other food materials, right? And the essential amino acids. So this is an important point. I've gone a few different tangents here, but the essential amino acids are, I think many people are familiar with this, or maybe this is good for the dinner party. They're the part that your body can't make. So when you eat protein, there's some non-essential amino acids, 11 of them, and there's the essential, the 9. Your body can't make the 9, so it has to get them from foods. But the other key part about essential amino acids, and this is going to make you really smart at the dinner party.
Nice.
Right? It's not just that your body can't make them. They're the active component of the protein. They're not just a building block. They're not just this material that's going to be used to like build new muscle. They have a chemical messenger role. They actually communicate to the body to kickstart protein synthesis. Not of the same degree, but of the same, like when you think about, I do resistance training, I lift heavy weights and it tells my body to build new muscle fundamentally. In a similar fashion, when you consume essential amino acids, and they hit a high enough peak concentration in your blood, it tells your body to build new proteins, replace old proteins, build new ones, make more, make new. So there's actually a stimulus aspect of protein itself. It's not only from exercise, it comes from nutrition itself. When you consume the beef protein on its own, you get higher peak concentrations of the essential amino acids in your blood all at once. And it tells the body, that's what tells the body to build new proteins. Interestingly, though, if you take a whey protein powder, the whey protein powder stimulates 3 times as much of the protein synthesis as the lean beef. So beef protein on its own versus
Are all protein powders created equal? I'm almost positive the answer is no.
The answer is no. So part of the reason for the threefold increase in protein synthesis of the whey protein powder, one major piece of it is that it is even more isolated. There's even less going on with it. There's less carbs and fat and other things happening. And it's so much more immediately digestible and bioavailable in the terms we've been discussing right now. Like my body can just break it down and get it and convert it and get the amino acids out of it and put them in the blood. On top of that, though, the actual amino acid profile of the whey proteins are more impactful. I won't say better, but they're better for stimulating protein synthesis than that of a beef protein. And that's because it's a little bit higher in leucine, higher in the branched chain amino acids, better availability of the lysine. So the actual profile of the whey protein is superior to the beef protein in terms of the actual amino acid composition. So it's a combination of both bioavailability, not having anything else in the mix, and the actual profile of the amino acids is better.
And so leucine is one of the primary signaling factors in muscle protein synthesis. Is that correct?
That is correct. And not just muscle protein synthesis. This is another way to get
protein synthesis of all the parts.
Whole body protein synthesis. But
Yeah.
yes, of muscle protein synthesis, but overall whole body protein synthesis, communicating to your whole body to create new proteins and to replace old ones.
And last time we spoke, I remember it seemed like you had, this is a unintentional pun arriving in a moment. Prepare yourself.
Mhm.
You had beef with BCAAs, taking them as a separate supplement, if I remember correctly. What are your thoughts on BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, as a supplement on their own?
So continuing on with kind of like this frame with like the whey protein, the next idea would then be like, okay, well, what's the most important thing in the whey protein? And what you just highlighted is that the branched chain amino acids, which are three of the essential amino acids, are very important in the whey protein. We've actually seen if we add more of them to the whey protein, like you take supplemental BCAAs on top of the whey protein, it can make the whey protein even more effective.
Mm.
So, what if you didn't take anything else? You stripped out the non essential amino acids, you stripped out the other 6 essential amino acids, and all you took were the BCAAs. All you took were these 3 branch chain amino acids. What if we did that? Could that create an even greater protein synthesis spike than what you get from the whey protein? Would it be, that much better than the beef and that much better than the whey protein isolate? In early studies, we're talking 30 years ago when we started to study this stuff, the scientific community, they thought that was the case. And over the course of studying it more and more, what they saw was that there was a really strong signal. Like basically it would be like leucine and isoleucine and valine play this role in communicating like, hey, let's stimulate protein synthesis. They'd see this really big spike signal. But then if you do not have the other essential amino acids, it crashes.
Mm.
So it's very clear, conclusive in the scientific community for a long time now, at least 10 years, that taking branched chain amino acids on their own do not stimulate any additional muscle protein synthesis. They are not anabolic, they're potentially even catabolic. So
Mm.
taking them on their own versus a whey protein does not make sense and is not worth your money.
What is the? I think you'll know the term of this. I'm blanking the term. It's like the symphony effect or orchestra effect of food, and the suggestion is it's better to eat a whole food as opposed to an isolated supplement of the food. Do you know the term I'm looking for?
I'm not sure the exact term you're looking
It's
for.
something like that. It's
I
some
mean,
like
I get it. It makes sense.
orchestral term where if
Uh-huh.
you just have the base, it's not as bioavailable to the body, or the body doesn't really understand the information as much as if you were, by bass I mean like bass guitar, as much
Mhm.
as if you actually have the whole symphony of the rest of the micronutrients. And they're kind of eating an apple contains all of the micronutrients with together. The integration of them actually allows the aggregate to be more bioavailable compared to just taking like a whatever, a B supplement, or taking a
Mhm.
specific micronutrient aspect of that. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Because that kind of goes against a little bit what you're saying right now.
It's hard for me to speak to like that specific argument, but I'll try to get on board with it and
Yeah,
support it as much
yeah,
as I can in a way that makes sense to me.
yeah.
Part of what you said makes a lot of sense. What I would say is like fundamentally, we evolved to need a lot of different things in our diet. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different micronutrients. There's a need for fiber. There's a need for essential amino acids. There's a need for even some non-essential amino acids. Like we have general needs for this. And if we're trying to overall live a good, healthy, vibrant life, what's like the most obvious thing to do? Eat whole foods. Like eat whole foods that are rich in micronutrients and that are rich in protein. Um, Specifically, maybe avoid things that are over-engineered processed foods that are super high in caloric intake, like they're really rich in energy. They have tons of sugar and fats, but they don't have essential amino acids. They don't have micronutrients. Like they're this over-engineered food that really its only value is to be hyper dense in caloric intake.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, don't eat that, eat the whole foods. Additionally, like eating foods with other people is this awesome. I love having dinner with people and lunch and talking and enjoying, and I love the taste and the flavor of these things. So it seems like the most fundamental, obvious thing that I would be, it's someone would have to present really robust scientific information and more meaningful, like going back to like the narrative, subjective. Do people be healed if they're blind? Like life information to make me think like, don't eat whole foods, you
Yeah,
know?
sure. Yeah.
It seems really obvious. So it makes a lot of sense. And I feel really supportive of that.
Yeah.
Then the question becomes, okay, well, in my diet today, based on my specific needs and where I am in my life. And where I am in my life could be based off age, how old I am. It could be based off of some type of thing that happened to me. I got injured or hurt. It could be, man, I made a bunch of crappy decisions for a while and I overate a ton of calories or drank a bunch of alcohol or ate a bunch of sugar. And now I'm 20 pounds overweight and I have a bunch of excess fat. Um, or going back to the age thing, man, I'm getting older and I'm still trying to eat these whole food meals and do what I was doing before. And it's like not working as well. Like I don't feel as good and like what's happening. Or it could be, man, I really want to perform at that much higher of a level. Like I'm already dialed in, I'm eating these whole foods. They feel really good, but it's like, could I run a little bit faster? Could I jump a little bit higher? I've got this weird thing on my shoulder. Like I want to be able to like get through that and heal that. In those types of contexts, I'm already eating good whole foods. Are there choices that I could make that would help supplement my diet, which I think is the core idea of supplements, that would enhance me that much more?
Yeah.
That is where I think things like a protein powder come in. That is where things like an essential amino acid supplement come in, colostrum, like all these various types of supplemental type products. They're not to replace eating whole real foods. They're to supplement and to potentially
Yeah.
improve my life that much more, or to help me recover from some type of negative things that happened to me or poor decisions that I made in the past. So I
Yeah.
think that's how these things fit together.
Something that I notice personally in adding mass specifically, like if my intention is to put on muscle mass, I personally find it significantly easier to supplement with a protein. And one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is I am a really big fan of Kion. So the whey protein I think is fantastic, and the essential amino acid supplement I use very regularly. And I wonder, can a person competently put on the same level of muscle mass just eating whole foods, or is adding that supplementation as a general absolute always going to be supportive? And is there a point where you're actually eating too much protein and now suddenly you're putting more pressure and stress on your organs in the guise of gains?
Great questions. There are significant advantages to supplementation, and it depends on your situation. So what I'd start by saying is the younger you are and the healthier you already are, the easier it's going to be to put on muscle mass simply by eating higher amounts of whole food protein without using a protein powder or something like that. So if you're 20 years old and you're already pretty healthy and fit, it's going to be easier. The older you get, starting at age 30, and then every decade it becomes that much more difficult to put on muscle and to maintain it, is because your ability to digest protein, thus the bioavailability of that protein, and also your sensitivity to the amino acids in the protein to stimulate new protein synthesis, combined with a lower sensitivity to the stimulation of even resistance training. The gains that a 50-year-old gets from lifting weights are not as great as the gains as someone who is 25. They simply are, you don't get the same amount of stimulus. That doesn't mean don't lift weights till you're 50, that much more lift weights, right? But you simply are getting less benefit from the exercise and less benefit from the whole food protein than you used to get. And thus the benefits of utilizing a protein powder or an essential amino acid supplement are going to be greater. And here's what they provide. And I'll give some examples of that. So in young adults, given the examples I gave earlier, a whey protein powder is going to stimulate 3 times the amount of protein synthesis as beef. An essential amino acid, and that's beef eaten on its own, right? An essential amino acid supplement with ideal formulations, which we can go into later, is going to stimulate 3 times the amount of protein synthesis as the whey protein powder, gram for gram. So as you can already tell, the whey protein powder 3 times as much as the meat, and the essential amino acids 3 times as much as the whey protein powder, significantly more than the meat on its own. Now, do you need to take the whey protein powder, or do you need to take the essential amino acids? Well, if you're trying to hit higher daily intakes of protein, which is fundamentally higher daily intakes of essential amino acids, then you're probably eating, 2 to 3 meals a day, and then maybe you're like adding a protein shake, or you're having a snack of some beef jerky, or doing something else like that. The choice to hit those higher daily intake levels of protein will be much more highly impacted by using a protein powder, and even that much more by using an essential amino acid supplement, than trying to just eat one more chicken breast, or trying to eat one more Greek yogurt cup, or trying to eat one more hamburger patty, or whatever your strategy is to get there. It's going to be so much more effective. So you could potentially not have to eat quite as much of the protein, because you're getting so much more impact from the whey protein powder, and even that much more from the essential amino acids. Or you could still hit those daily levels and add it on top of that and get even greater benefit. Now, if you put that in the context of older people, for 60-year-old women, essential amino acids, again, in an ideal formula, have over 6 times the impact of the whey protein powder.
Wow.
So if you're 25, it's one thing. If you're 60, it's a very different thing. So then when you start to think about trying to eat more protein, you're going to get, the older you get, you're going to get so much more benefit from trying to supplement those spots in your diet with something like a protein powder, and even that much more benefit from something like an essential amino acid supplement. So if you're trying to put on more muscle, even just maintain the muscle that you have if you're getting older, or you want to lose fat but maintain muscle, the benefits of supplementing, and I'm not saying replacing meals with with supplements, but like you're already eating a few 2 to 3 good whole food meals per day, or even 4 or 5 if they're smaller, supplementing in between or supplementing during those meals with essential amino acids or with whey protein is going to give you a much greater impact than just trying to eat more protein, which is probably some of the benefits you've seen, where it's like, instead of eating one more meal, I have like 2 scoops of Kion protein, and maybe have some essential amino acids with it as well, or I take essential amino acids before or after I train. Yeah, like they're having way more impact than just trying to eat more protein.
And would you recommend taking a protein supplement on its own or in tandem with a meal? If you did it in tandem with a meal, you're getting more protein, but you're also getting the kind of the busyness of your digestive system to be processing the rest of the micronutrients from that food.
Again, I think this is relative to like how much you care about this stuff and what your age is and what your health is. The younger you are, the closer you are to like 20 and you're already super vibrant and healthy, the less it matters when and how you eat your protein. The older you get, the more important to think about actually eating the protein at multiple times a day, separating it out, trying to make it more ideal, right? Not just like eating it all at once where your body maybe can't digest and utilize it. That said, so in that context, I would say generally, separating a whey protein powder from other protein-based meals is better. But with essential amino acids, either way is really good, because actually consuming the essential amino acids, say at the time that you eat steak as part of a whole food meal, because the essential amino acids on their own, if you drink them before you eat, stimulate this new bout of this new session basically of protein synthesis, it's going to better utilize the protein from the meal to rebuild proteins in the body than if you had not consumed the essential amino acids. So there's actually real benefit to consuming the essential amino acids with meals. And I'll just name this is something that actually took me longer to grasp, and it's more recent understanding of the research. There's a great paper in 2020 that came out, got kind of lost in the mix in Nutrients. David Church was the lead author, but it had a lot to do with a lot of the information that led to the International Society of Sports Nutrition position paper on essential amino acids last year. And one of the lead authors on that, Arnie Ferrando, is actually who helped me understand this better. It's like, no, the benefits of the essential amino acids actually, even with a protein meal, are very significant. That said, if you're going long periods of the day without protein consumption, like you have dinner at 8 p.m. and then you don't eat for the rest of the night, and then you like to fast in the morning, the benefits of consuming the essential amino acids in the morning when you're not eating other foods is going to have a very positive effect. Because when you go through those extended periods without consuming protein, you're going into a net protein loss. You're going to lose it's not like every day you're going to lose tons of muscle, but over the course of a year, if you don't eat breakfast every single day and you don't consume essential amino acids, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle. Whereas if you consume the essential amino acids, you could actually potentially gain muscle, which they have very clear studies on, again, with more clinical populations. Like women in their 60s, they take essential amino acids, 2 servings. The equivalent would be like 2 servings of Kion aminos twice a day. They were able to add 10 pounds of lean muscle mass in 3 months.
Amazing. And how would a person make themselves more sensitive to protein synthesis in general? Old, young. If a person's 50 years old and you're saying they can start to become less sensitive to the protein that they're consuming, would that be an enzymatic conversation? Would that be like a probiotic thing? Would that be like how do we work on sensitivity with protein?
That's a really great and interesting question. It's actually not about the bioavailability of the protein. So that is its own separate issue. The
Yeah.
idea that you need enzymes to help break down the protein, it's at a more cellular level that the amino acids themselves don't stimulate mTOR to the same degree that they did when you were younger. And similarly, the stress of the resistance exercise does not. So I'm actually not familiar with, is there a specific, it sounds more like honestly like a potential drug that would need to be developed that would actually overcome that signaling resistance. But what we do know is that through nutrition itself and through supplementation, by giving these people actually in some type of stressful situation that could be recovering from an injury or a disease, as well as people undergoing significant hormonal changes like perimenopausal and menopausal women, to older people who develop this anabolic resistance, consuming essential amino acids that are enhanced with higher amounts of leucine specifically, but also isoleucine, valine, and lysine, it overcomes that anabolic resistance. Like it overcomes it in a way that like just the whey protein powder doesn't. And that's why you see such a stark difference between 20-year-olds where it's 3 times the impact of essential amino acids over whey protein versus 60-year-olds where it's 6 times. So I would say the most obvious, more food and supplement based way to do it is through essential amino acid consumption, but to actually change it at like change the way that the body is doing it. I'm not familiar with a drug that does that right now.
What is the difference in protein demands from a male versus a female? Because I think a lot of the research that people end up spouting comes from young white dudes in colleges that want to make an extra $50 to be a part of a research study. How does that spill into the conversation of male female needs, nutritional needs?
In a lot of research and in sports nutrition research, it is accurate to say that young males tend to be the study participants. And then when you look at where else money gets spent, it's on doing research on the elderly, right? Or people in disease states. What is actually very fascinating is that when you look at studies specifically around things like whey protein and even more specifically around essential amino acids, there are studies for like almost every age group and both genders. So there is a lot of research specifically on women, young women athletes, young like women soccer athletes, runners, track and field, perimenopausal women, elderly women, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. I mean, it's like it's amazing how much published research there's on this. And what is pretty apparent is that actually the protein requirement needs, specifically for building and maintaining lean muscle and overall body composition, and for stimulating whole body protein synthesis, is very similar to males.
Okay.
If you basically look at like differences of weight, like if the woman weighs 30% less, then her protein intake needs are about 30% less. The one place where there is a slight kind of difference is during unique. There's been research actually on monthly cycles of women, and it seems that the protein requirements actually aren't different. There were hypotheses there might be. That said, during perimenopause, there are potential differences. So, if there's a 50-year-old couple and the man and the woman both, they don't digest protein as well as they used to. They both are less sensitive to the essential amino acid stimulating mTOR and building and maintaining muscle. But the stresses that the woman is undergoing through potentially more significant hormonal changes at that time, and reduce sleep, which sleep has a huge impact on anabolism, on the ability to build and maintain muscle, impacts on overall just like stress. And there's a whole stress response that reduces the ability to build and maintain muscle. women could potentially, it looks like, actually need more protein or more essential amino acids during those specific periods. If the goal is to build and maintain muscle, just maintain muscle and not gain, fat weight.
What would you say the top ways to prevent sarcopenia or muscle breakdown or just the general conservation of the muscle that a person has be from your perspective? Protein, I would imagine, would be a primary one. What are some other factors a person can be thinking about if they want to protect the resources that they presently have in the form of muscle mass?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the most obvious ones are protein, complete protein that is rich in essential amino acids, and or supplementation of essential amino acids if we're talking about an aging population, because that's sarcopenia. It's not happening like 20-year-olds. So I think essential amino acid supplementation makes a lot of sense. Resistance training, like, regular 3 times a week, ideally minimum resistance training, is really important and key. And I think maybe the thing that's most overlooked is sleep.
Yeah.
Sufficient sleep has a huge impact on protein synthesis. I was lucky enough to recently attend the International Society of Sports Nutrition Conference, and actually the gentleman earlier named Professor David Church had a presentation there basically on the pyramid of anabolism and like what's most important. And at the foundation, the most important thing is sleep. The amount of sleep that you get in a given day, and a deficiency of sleep will seriously impact your ability to prioritize protein synthesis on the next day. Interestingly, on days that you do not sleep enough, participating in resistance exercise can help overcome those catabolic effects. So while it may seem kind of like counterintuitive, like, oh, I didn't sleep that well, I should probably take a rest day and like give myself a rest, it actually could really be helpful and important to do some form of resistance exercise on those days.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I find. Anytime I feel like I'm not feeling well, if I get a quick little workout in, suddenly within 20 minutes, I'm like, life's not that bad. And it's also I think just like you make better choices with when you're training, when you're exercising, and when you are circulating your fluids. And you also have like the antidepressive effects of exercise and the release of irisin and BDNF and all the things that promote cognitive clarity and neuroplasticity, and you just become a better version of yourself, which leads to better choices. How can a person, so in that same vein, how can a person live a lifestyle that causes them to be hungry for the foods that are actually health supporting as opposed to destructive for our health?
I find so often in my life that there's a cascading effect of behaviors. And the more that I anchor certain types of positive behaviors together, the more they support each other.
Yeah.
And so, again, I would start with sleep. The ability to have a good routine around sleep and to go to sleep every night at a time that allows you to have sufficient hours of both getting deep sleep and REM over the course of that night will have a huge impact on what happens the next day. And you got to start there. It's like you start, I'm thinking about tomorrow today, because tomorrow really starts with when I go to bed today, and if I'm able to sleep well, which then if I back out of that, it's like, okay, well, did I consume stimulants too soon before I tried to go to sleep? Did I eat too soon before I went to sleep that would disrupt my sleep? So thinking about those things are going to positively impact your ability to really get deep rest, to get deep sleep hours, and to get REM hours. It's like so core and foundation. If you do that and then you wake up the next morning and then you think, hey, in the morning, do I have enough time to properly set myself up for the day that I want to have? And I think that's, people can have all different types of routines. You could have breathwork routines, meditation, journaling, just sitting and looking out the window, times to do stretching, like whatever are the things that are really going to set you up to find your balance in the morning. Yeah. To then be oriented so that like you don't, and I guess it's like, kind of like how you start your day and how you end your day. Otherwise, you wind up at the end of the day exhausted, frustrated. I participated in all these emotional, relational experiences I didn't like. I'm in this job, blah, blah, blah. It's like you got all these complaining things, and now it's like I need to relax. I'm going to have a drink, and now I've drank alcohol, which is going to directly negatively impact my sleep. Yeah. Or So it's like, I think it's how you end your day and how you start your day that then allows all of the behaviors in between to find alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're engaging in activities or living a lifestyle that induces a sensation of survival, you're probably going to be inclined to reach out for like kindling for nutrition in the form
Uh-huh.
of simple sugars, or, you're going to want like salt, fat, and sugar, which all those are great in their own right. But if you feel like you are well insulated with health inducing lifestyle factors, you'd be more inclined to not be reaching out for something that's kind of like, okay, I only have 30 minutes left to live. I got to get a little shot of energy. It would be something where you can more like invest in yourself. I think at a cellular level, your cells are kind of thinking in tandem with that. Um, with the, the question I was curious about was amount of protein, something that I've heard in like the bro scheme of fitness and training and whatnot, for different things, of getting a gram per pound of lean body mass being your body mass without fat. I've heard getting a gram per pound of body mass. I've heard too much protein can cause issues with your organs and can become toxic in its own right. What's the appropriate amount of protein? I would imagine it would vary based off of activity level and age. But how do we narrow in on an appropriate number of grams of protein per day?
It will vary based off of activity levels, age, and any other specific goals that you
Yeah.
have. So, assuming that you are already at your ideal body weight and up close to whatever your kind of ideal body composition is, and you are, let's just say, 30 or younger, then I think around zero point 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight
Yeah.
are generally going to probably work to help you sustain that. If you want to increase your muscle mass, or you want to perform at a much higher level, like you're trying to be some kind of, you're trying to run. It doesn't be a competitive athlete, but like you're trying to be better at basketball or better, you really like there's something in you're trying to perform some series in yoga, right? That's just like super taxing on your body. And it's like you feel like you need more support. Like probably going up to like that gram of protein is going to be more helpful.
Hmm.
If you're in a situation, in this age group again, like under 30, where you have excess fat mass and you want to lose that fat, then you need to cut calories to whatever degree that you feel comfortable cutting calories that is basically going to equal to the amount of fat that you lose. And you'll basically lose approximately 1 pound of fat per 3,500 calories if you consume sufficient essential amino acids. So, for example, if I cut 500 calories per day from my diet over the course of 7 days, that's 3,500 calories. I could lose about a pound of fat per week if I consume enough additional protein. And this is the reason for that. It's been shown that for every 30% reduction in calories that's consumed, or at a 30% reduction of calories, if I need to get 2,000 calories per day to maintain my current body weight, and I cut 600 calories, I will need to consume 3 times the amount of essential amino acids. And if that's in whole food protein, it means 3 times the amount of whole food protein as I did previously to maintain a net protein balance, to maintain all of my muscle.
Oh,
So
man.
if previously I was active, I was fit, I'm doing lots of activities, and I needed about 0.8 grams of protein, I'm gonna need like 3 times that amount
Hmm.
if I'm cutting those calories to make sure that I'm only losing fat and yet keeping protein, and yet keeping muscle. So it's different. It's like that's a lot more protein. And would I suggest doing that forever? No. But if you want to cut the fat and maintain the muscle, you do need to do that. The other option, though, would be to consume something like an essential amino acid supplement, where you could stay at 0.8 or 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, supplement with the additional essential amino acids, probably at a much lower amount too, because they're so much more efficacious than the protein itself. And you could only be cutting fat and yet maintaining muscle. If you're getting older, so now we're getting over 30, I mean, the gram of protein per pound of body weight is a much better guide overall.
Interesting.
And the older that you get, the more that's going to be important. I think the thing is, when you start getting into someone who's like 60, and I might be like, hey, you should really be consuming like, you know, 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. That's a lot of food for someone who's 60. I'm trying to talk to a 60-year-old woman and say like, hey, this is how much you need to eat. It's a lot of protein. It's a lot of meat. And then it's like, what else is she eating? Does she still get to eat like anything that's like, it's
Yeah.
like not protein, or she get to have any carbs that she likes or fats, and like, have things, or she's only eating like broccoli, and is she like on a bodybuilder diet, right?
Yeah.
In that case, it's like, instead I would say still try to aim for that gram of protein per pound of body weight. But the benefits again of supplementing with a whey protein powder, or even additionally with essential amino acids, is going to help you to hit those higher essential amino acid needs that you have if you want to maintain your lean muscle as you age, without trying to consume so much more additional protein. And it's honestly, it's exactly what I talked about with my wife this last weekend, who's in her mid 40s. She was asking me in more detail. Like, typically she doesn't want my advice on this stuff, right? She wants to talk to her nutritionist and her trainer or whatever. But she was like, it's like, I'm at the gram of protein per pound of body weight. I take the aminos before I work out, and I'm like, try to take sometimes later in the day. Should I be doing that? Why? How does it work? And I just gave her the case of like, hey, if it was you, but you were 25 years old and you're doing this amount of resistance training and you're eating this protein, I'd be like, take the aminos before or after you work out, and you're gonna have a better session. You're gonna get more out of it, right?
Yeah.
But as you're older, it's like, dude, just add it. Like, you just take the aminos every morning, no matter you're training or not, and take them again at the end of the day, and still hit that gram of protein per pound of body weight, and you're gonna age beautifully.
What are your thoughts on the protein leverage hypothesis, that your body will continue to be hungry until you achieve adequate protein in the body, until you reach your protein needs? Your body will keep sending the signal for more calories.
It makes sense as one key mechanism that is involved in hunger. I think that there's a lot of more recent research around hunger. I mean, there's research around hunger over the last 30 years, but especially more with like the GLP-1 agonists coming out, things like Ozempic and Wegovy, and how hunger is triggered and why. And there actually being very unique genetic differences between people around what controls appetite, up or down, that I think is not directly related to this. And there does seem to be good science, and it makes a lot of sense that the body is trying to get core nutrients and get its energy needs met, right? So it's trying to get certain types of vitamins and minerals. And as we've obviously explored in this podcast, like, it needs essential amino acids. It needs these essential amino acids to help rebuild the heart, to help rebuild the kidneys, to maintain lean muscle, et cetera. And it's going to eat enough food until it can get those, right? And so if you're consuming food that is very dense in all of these other calories, right? It's highly processed. It's just like soaking in fat and carbs and sugar and stuff like that, but it doesn't have micronutrients. It doesn't have essential amino acids in it. Then you're going to keep eating it until your body can get what it's actually trying to get. Thus, if you were to actually focus first in your diet on trying to ensure that while in this meal, for example, I'm trying to get 200 grams of protein per day in my diet, and I'm going to eat 4 meals a day. One of them is going to be a snack of some kind. Well, that means I got to get, 50 grams of protein in per meal. If I can ensure that I'm getting those 50 grams of protein in sooner and earlier in the meal, and that then quells it actually has an impact on ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Because I'm getting those, my body's able to detect that I'm getting those essential amino acids, I'm getting that protein that needs being met, that then I wouldn't be just searching for all these additional calories, because at the same time, like, my caloric needs are getting met as well, probably through that meal. I mean, if it's, assuming I'm not only eating the protein, I'm eating protein, I'm also eating some other type of carb and fat, et cetera, then those core needs are getting met. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And I could say from anecdotal evidence, from knowing so many people who have lost weight, sustained weight loss, built muscle, trained, it works. Like, when you focus on your protein intake and you don't actually worry as much about the carbs and fat, then you can have, assuming you're eating like whole foods. I mean, if you're not worrying about the carbs and fat, but you're eating like highly processed fat or highly processed sugar, you're going to probably feel pretty bad. Like, a lot of the macro and calorie counting stuff kind of sorts itself out.
Yeah. I appreciate you so much, man. Thank you for just investing yourself into understanding the ins and outs of such like complex biochemistry. Um, is there anything else that would be supportive for listeners that we didn't touch on in relation to protein needs? And like I said, like I personally am a massive fan of, I use the Kion whey protein. It's my personal favorite protein that I've used for a while. And the essential amino acids I'm also a fan of. It's very convenient. I'll put that in my water when I'm like working out or whatever. I'll just toss it in there as a way to just provide a little like protein insulation throughout the day, like just in case kind of thing. And I personally, I'm a big fan. So I appreciate what you're doing with that. And I appreciate all the work you put in to actually understand these things to be able to create something meaningful for the world. Is there anything else that would be valuable to share before signing off?
Well, man, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here, and I'm grateful, to have you as a dedicated like fan and user of the product, and
Yeah.
for your endorsement. I guess I would just cover for anyone that, I'm here to try to provide education and actually like help people make better decisions about what to put in their body. If for any reason someone was not just gonna come to Kion, like I would just want to name what you would want to look for in those products. If you're looking for a protein powder, I highly recommend a whey protein isolate, a grass-fed whey protein isolate.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that being the whey protein isolates just have the best research around them in terms of their efficacy for the things we've talked about. They are like 99% lactose free. They're virtually lactose free, so almost everyone can, even people that think that they don't do well with dairy, do fine with them. I'm lactose intolerant. I do great with a whey protein isolate. So look for that. Look for something that doesn't have a bunch of added ingredients. You don't need really anything else. So for example, in the Kion product, it's like we've got Himalayan pink salt and organic natural flavors. Like that's, you don't need a bunch of other stuff. So just look for something really clean, and definitely look for, a quality, trustworthy brand. If it's significantly a cheaper product, you can buy, like as someone who owns a brand, like you can buy much cheaper quality raw ingredients that supposedly hit the same specs, and they don't. And I can't go into all the details around that right now, but like just don't go cheap on it. Like find something quality from someone you really trust.
Awesome.
On the amino acid front, the most important thing I'd highlight is don't buy anything that's a proprietary blend for amino acids. It depends, like can't go into all the different supplements and which ones where it matters or not, but the profile of amino acids is very important. So if someone doesn't tell you the exact percentage, the exact milligrams of the leucine, of the isoleucine, of the valine, don't buy that product. The proportions really matter. Next, the proportions you want to look for are, I'll point blank just say it is what Kion does. It follows the research, it follows NIH studies and NASA and all the leaders in this. It's basically, look at the Kion label and you'll see what it is. It's human skeletal muscle with increased amount of leucine to 40%, the isoleucine and the valine to match the original proportions, a higher amount of lysine because it's slower to get into the muscle fibers. And then after that, really, it's like, again, you don't need a bunch of other ingredients. You don't need other amino acids like arginine. You don't need other stuff. You need the key 9 essential amino acids for the things we talked about today, and just like look for something clean and quality. But yeah, don't buy anything that doesn't have 9 and that doesn't tell you what's in it or has other weird stuff. That'd be my advice.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Look forward to doing this again at some point. And thank you all for tuning in. That's it. That's all. I'll see you next week.